Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Monday, October the 5th. Before we get to the council agenda, though, we do have the Fiddleville Nonprofit Housing Corporation board meeting. So we'll start with that one and then move into the regular council agenda at the conclusion of the board meeting. So we'll call the board meeting to order. Quorum is established. I think every board member is present tonight. Are there any conflicts of interest to be declared by any board member? No, don't see any. Okay. So we have the minutes from the July 27th, 2020 Board of Directors meeting that were included in the package. Can I get a mover and seconder to adopt those minutes? Moved by board member Buffett, seconded by board member Bonato. Any discussion on those minutes or any questions? Okay, all in favor? That's carried. All right. So Trevor, do you have a financial report for us?
Absolutely. I have stopped recording because my voice apparently gets distorted when I'm using my camera as well. So that's why I've frozen here. If you turn to page 9 of your report, we continue to do very well as far as operating. So we'll go through our balance sheet fairly quickly. We have $226,000 in our bank account. In the reserves, though, we have $35,000 currently invested, and we are owed $55,000 from the bank account. So we should be moving it over there. I think I feel more confident just moving into our normal short-term or long-term bonds at this point. But I have been hesitant because with COVID, there's so much market volatility. You know, we're getting 1% at the bank right now, which isn't great, but at least it's stable versus, you know, the volatility. So at some point we will move that $55,000 over from the bank account. So that would reduce our bank account by that much. Accounts receivable, we're currently at $7,800 as of August 31st. We've updated the report. We ran it today. As of September 25th, we're down to $6,800, but there's only $1,300 that's more than 60 days overdue. So I just want to speak that COVID has affected our tenants, obviously, in many ways. But on rental arrears, we have 2 people that have ran up a little bit of arrears. But as a whole in our industry, we're not seeing a large influx. So I think that's important as a corporation for us to understand. Yeah, right now, currently, COVID is not affecting us too negatively on collecting rents from people. You know, because some industries that would be different.
Is that sort of consistent, Trevor, with the other buildings that you guys manage, or are we?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Like that, the CERB helped the people. You know, many of the people that with the $2,000. So we do have, in fact, in this case, we have a couple outliers that think there's no tribunal going on, which there's not, or now that it is operating, it's like back to February is the earliest date. We have a couple outliers that are choosing not to pay their rents, but we will deal with them. Like it's not like they won't technically be evicted at some point, but they've chosen to not pursue rent. But it's only 2 residents, and they're only both owing $300 each at this point, over 60 days.
Okay.
Carrying on the balance sheet, Dauphin County at the end of last year, we believe there's $3,100 owed from the county. The subsidy receivable of $26,000. The August subsidy check comes on September 1st. They do that because the mortgage payment is due September 1st. So they always give you your big check on the September 1st, just to make sure mortgages don't go bouncing anywhere. And that was set up from the beginning.
Sorry, if I may just interject, I just want to go back to your previous comment about the 2 tenants who have refused, I believe, if I heard correctly, refused to pay the rent. Are you able to share the circumstances behind that? Is that tied to COVID, or this 2 residents that have decided to go on rogue for a couple of months?
Can I pass that to Donna? Can you reply to that, Donna?
Honestly, I cannot answer whether or not these residents are just refusing to pay the rent, or if it is a financial thing. When we send out notices, we don't get response back. If we have phone calls with them, they are looking at the 2 names and you don't have the names. They are people that I would expect are just holding back because somebody
is there. Sorry, so what was the last part you said?
If you were to look at The one has been there for 5 years. The other one has been there since 2017. it's just, they are deciding that they're just not going to pay. Or they're just paying minimum amount. But we're not, as Trevor alluded to, the tribunal is just starting to do online, and there are no evictions happening. We'll work with these people. There are quite a few people that haven't paid their water and sewage, but they've paid their rent. It's just working together and making sure that we get the money. We will enter payment plans with these residents.
I would like to add that
And just
the county recently got some money from the province for COVID related things. And I know that they put, and I think Steve might be have been part of that. They did put a great deal of money into a rent bank to increase it for rental arrears. So if it is legitimate, there will be money available for those people. And we have another property where we do have two people that have openly flaunted they're not paying us. So I'm not saying these people have, but in this case, it's not unprecedented that people aren't paying intentionally.
And just my last comment for either two of you to respond to, with these tenants, whether it's the two that you recently mentioned or the other property, is there a history there, or this is something that's just come about new for these two residents in particular?
History with one, and not so much with the other.
And in our other examples, absolutely, there was a history of this behavior. So it seems like if that's your history, you'll continue it. If it's not, you've been good.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, carrying on the balance sheet, HST is $16,000. We get back 90% of the HST as having municipal funding. So this always creeps up and then we get it back. The miscellaneous receivable at $11.95. That's the solar panel payment at the end of every year. It just sits on the balance sheet because there's money owing from that. Then we have prepaid expenses. So we prepay insurance and taxes, and then we do journal entries to write them down. So at this point, we're into a negative. It's just because obviously there's a tax bill coming very soon, and we'll be prepaying $25,000 and then whittling it down $6,000 a month. So that's not to be concerned, but we are into a negative prepaid. The original land was $716,000. The building was $3.2 million. The equipment, which was original fridges and stoves, was $69,000. We depreciate over 35 years. The shirt, sheep, and ship are funding streams that we received in the past 10 years. The county requires us to leave it on the books for 10 years, and then they come off. So SHRP, I believe, will be coming off at the end of this year because it was 2010. But there are offsetting entries below, which are exactly equal. It was just designed so we couldn't, if we ever tried to get out of the operating agreement like a different group, then you'd have to pay that money back. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I looked at the monitor and thought I saw confusion. Under liabilities, nothing too material. Year-end trades of 15,000. The crew liability of 4,900 is your audit. Think about your first year in business. At the end of the year, you say we're all done. Somebody says we have to do an audit, so you set it up as a payable. So we're always paying the auditor for the year before. The accrued last month's rent interest, we pay interest on last month's rent, so it's $1,000. The accrued mortgage is this month's mortgage payment, so it's $18,000. The subsidy is $26,000. So they always give us a $26,000 check the day the mortgage comes out, so we never have to worry about balancing that. No, we'd never be short of cash, but just in case. Then you have the shirt, ship, and sheep, the employee tax deductions, last month's rent deposit payable. Somebody has a dog in their house. It's mine. I apologize. If you hear him barking, stop it. And then first mortgage is 1.29 million. So think about that building, 45 units, 15 townhouses, and we owe $1 million on it, which is the price of one mortgage. Simcoe County are recently doing housing. They're working on basically about $400,000 per unit model. So our building would be worth $16 million to replace at this point. Just throwing a ballpark number out there, and we owe $1 million on it. Here's the good news at the bottom line. The replacement reserve has 90,000, and our retained earnings are up to $156,000. So again, we make lots of operating money. We're just tight on capital. That's our balance sheet. The next page is our more interesting. This is our income statement. January to August 2020. There's two columns in the middle, year-to-date, actual and year-to-date budget. Market rent, the budget's 124, we're at 123, pretty close. RGI, the budget's 66, we brought in 71. We always estimate low. We will have to give that money back to the county at the end of the year. But it's a little bit of a float for us, $4,000. The subsidy revenue is almost to the dollar. Park laundry income's almost to the dollar. Parking income's almost to the dollar, is off by 40. Interest income is doing well because we have a lot of money in the bank account. Solar revenue is slightly higher. And then we have no NSF fees at this point. First mortgage, we know exactly what that is. Total wages and benefits off by 800. Other building general, so we have not had many move outs. Well, we actually have had a few, but ours in our area are more related to, we've had some passings and some changes, but as a whole in our industry, we're having very few move outs and less. So the other building general is sort of the slush fund where everything gets all the expenses. So the budget was 23, we're at 18, so that's a good sign. Internet services, the budget's 26, we're at 33. We have a great contract. It's $3,600 a year, but we have to pay if there's a problem. We did have an electrical problem there, so we had to pay for them to come up and fix it. And it was actually our end, an electrical issue at our end, but we thought it was the internet. So so there's going to be a little bit extra. Elevators a little bit lower. Snow removal we're lower, which is good. Landscaping is nice. The budget was $6,000. We've only spent $400. Dan, the superintendent, is doing all the lawn cutting now. And so that's going to end up being only about $3,500 by the year end. So we have some savings there. Our last contractor we walked away from. We weren't happy with them. Heating and plumbing is a little bit above, but we mentioned before there was one major pipe leak from one floor to the other. So we were going to be over budget there. I think we mentioned before that is probably a number that should be adjusted. Waste removal slightly above, security almost to the dollar. Electricity, I want to comment. So the budget's 28,000, we spent 37. After our last meeting, I went down to the building. We looked at the meter to figure out why it was running or what was going on, because I compared usage from years before. We used to get the Ontario electricity energy rebate. So I realized that we hadn't got the paperwork. We resubmitted it. They have given us a $42,000 credit on our hydro bill.
How much?
So for the last 2 years, they were graciously the Ontario Hydro. So we have a $42,000 credit on our hydro bill. So we won't pay hydro for the next year and a half.
42,000. Wow.
$42,000. I know. So, and that was because it came up last time. I'm going, how are we doing everything right? And we're so far over. It's because a year and a half ago, they took off, like last October, they stopped giving us the Ontario electricity rebate, which was 31% of our bill. And they went back to that date graciously without any grief and just applied a big credit to us.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Which is why we won't pay another hydro bill for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Natural gas and oil is a little bit higher than budget. Water and sewage, a little lower. But again, we're going to have some really nice wins there because we changed over electric air makeup unit to gas, which is why our gas is 4,000, but we expected a big decline in electricity and we have now seen it. Municipal taxes. So we were reassessed our value of the building plus the tax rate for the apartment buildings got reduced, the multi-residential, I believe it was. So that money will also have to go back to the county at the end of the year, that 13,000. So our bottom line will be adjusted by about 18,000. Insurance, a little bit above. Education allowance, we paid to be members of Ontario Nonprofit Housing Association. Audit and accounting fees we paid for the year. Bank interest charges. Our management fees are slightly above. The reserve fund transfers to the dollar. So I'm showing a $45,000 profit. Reasonably, we'll make $25,000 at least, if not 40,000.
All right. Are there any questions for Trevor? No. If not, for a motion to approve the financial update, Board Member Bonato, seconded by Board Member Fegan. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right. And the property management report.
Okay. Oh, so yes. Okay. So one of our duties on the September board meeting is to approve the budget, operating budget for 2021. As you can see, I provided this budget I like showing some historical numbers. It's sort of interesting to see what happened. And I haven't gone every year at the top, but 2009, 11, 13, 16, 18. One example of that would be if you go 2/3 of the way down electricity, you'll see at one point we're at $62,000 in 2016. This year, we're going to be at $35,000. That's completely a new air makeup unit we provided, that we put in, installed. Cost us about $100,000, but it'll take us about 4 years to get our money back. Which is why I was so concerned we were over electricity before, because we should have these savings. So that's awesome.
Yep.
I have made no material changes to the budget from this year to last year. I don't think there's anything necessarily that needs to be adjusted or tweaked. I did lower the taxes. I'm on the third from the last line, municipal taxes. I had this year's budget at $100,000. I put in $80,000. It is called a flow-through expense. So when taxes are lower than budgeted, we have to give that money back. But I'm not sure it's reasonable for us when we know the tax bill is going to be $80,000, to put in $100,000 to hold that money.
We had talked before, Trevor, and you just mentioned it during the financial report, the heating and plumbing line item.
Yes,
Should we-
and I apologize.
No,
I
that's
quickly looked at
fine.
that.
But
Yeah,
should we bump that up to at least 6, do you think?
I would think 8,000 would be a better working number, which would be a 5,000, which would reduce our bottom line profit to $27,000, which is still a reasonable estimation.
Yeah. Okay. Any other board member Hull?
I do have a couple of questions with regards to the 22 or the 21 budget. I do see that you've shown the revenue drop by about 30 on your forecast or your projected, and about 27 from 2020. Is there any specific reason that it dropped so much?
Basically the rent geared income, because you can see the rent geared income has gone from 89,000 to 100,000. So that's $10,000. And the taxes are also a flow through. So we used to have $100,000 budget for taxes. So those two lines alone have reduced it by $30,000. And those are flow through expenses. So if they cost less, or if we get more rent geared income money, which is an outcome of COVID where we're generating more money, that number 329,777, the third line from the top, that comes from a subsidy form we put into the county of Dufferin. And it all formulates through as to based on what the income is and the rent geared income.
Now, another question with regards to snow removal.
Yes.
You mentioned later in the report about maintaining the snow removal costs from this past year, moving forward into the next 2 years.
Yep.
But I see that it's up by 2,000 from the 2020 budget.
The problem with snow removal, you've always got fattening, because if you have a bad snowy winter, which I have heard this year is supposed to be snowy, we have to take it off site. This year we had a great winter pretty well everywhere. Even I live in Aurelia, like we did not have to haul snow in almost any of our properties. That really is a protection budget line, because if we have to trailer it off site, it'll cost $2,000. Because you're right, the projected year end was 12,500, and we didn't have to haul any snow off site at all this winter.
Okay, then same with the landscaping. You're showing that we've got the large savings in our year to date that you just covered off.
Yep.
But then we're showing the complete loss of that going back to the original budget from 2020.
Because at this point, we're keeping that, again, a little bit of protection, because Dan has agreed to do it, but Dan could injure himself. Dan could refuse to do it. He agreed because in the last minute, we got unhappy with the landscaper, like in the spring this year, and we basically fired him. So Dan has agreed to do it for next year, but that is a little bit subject to our decision, which right now we're happy with, but it's also subject to if we had, it would be easier to put in there now and come back to than ask for more money later if we had to, because that's the cost of a landscaper to come and do it.
Okay, and then the last question I've got is with regards to your utilities. I know you talked about the just under 42,000, but I don't see it reflected in your budget. I know that it's a rebate, so you're not having to pay it. So usually in this financial side is talking about payouts too, right?
I wasn't sure how to do that, because it probably should be an adjustment though for some of last year. I think the auditor is going to do an adjustment, and it's for this fiscal year. I just wasn't sure how to record that on a budget because pure expenses will be $35,000 for electricity next year, but we won't be paying that out. That's just me not knowing how to record on a budget because maybe Denise could give some advice or, as a treasurer, Carrie, because should I show that or not?
Barry, any thoughts on that?
So Trevor, do you work on a cash budget the same as a municipality?
No, we do accruals.
Okay, so whatever the auditors are going to do with that, so you say you're going to experience a savings this year?
Yes, we probably will. We spent 38,000 with $42,000 of credits. Hydro for this year is to me supposed to be
So
zero.
your 2021 should be reduced then to account for that credit. Whatever you're going to budget for 2021,
Yep,
you'll have to take that credit into
that extra 7,000. Okay, then I would recommend based on that we would adjust the electricity to 28,000 if that's acceptable, Councillor Hall.
Yeah.
So I believe there'll be $7,000 left over at the end of this year that will then go into next year, reducing that from 35 to 28.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a little confused on the hydro. We got,
Yep.
you said we got a $42,000 credit.
Yes,
We paid this year by the sheet up top, 38.
yep. I have the paperwork I brought with me from Hydro One that shows every month from back to October 2019 as a credit.
So confused because we overpaid already what we, like what we said, what the sheet said last year. We overpaid because, let me get back down to that sheet. So you, and you had, where's hydro here? Electricity. You had 28,000, we paid 37.
Yep.
Okay, so we overpaid by almost $9,000, right?
No, I believe over the last 2 years, we've overpaid by $42,000.
Yeah, I understand that.
Oh.
I'm going by the budget. The budget was 28 and we paid 37.
Yes,
Okay, so we've gone over the budget by $9,000 is what I'm saying.
yes.
Okay, next year, we've only got $7,000 of savings. You're gonna reduce it by, and yet we had $42,000?
Because we do it as accruals, we'll set I believe we'll be setting the utilities this year at zero for electricity. It will all be applied to this year.
Okay, so this year on the budget sheet, it's zero.
On the income statement, on when we present the financials at the end of the year, they'll present zero for gas cost, electricity costs. And there'll still be $7,000 available for next year.
Okay, for 2022.
Yes, 2021.
21. So then your 2020 year-end projection shouldn't say 35,000 either then.
No,
It should say zero.
yeah, that's where I'm getting confused.
On your budget.
You're right. It's just a subtle, complicated issue because of the actual costs are gonna be 35,000. That's what I was trying to present on the budget, the actual cost, but we do have all these credits that are gonna keep being applied to it. That'll just keep wiping out all costs. So you're right. Maybe I should apply it for next year. Like I should put zero is really what next year should be.
And
Yeah, I think you leave it to your auditor.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's very subtle. Like I've never seen this much credit before.
Well, see, that's why I was confused because you've already paid $35,000.
Right, so they're not sending us a check. We just have a credit on the account of $42,000. So this month we got our bill and it wiped it out.
I got that, but 35,000 is already gone. That's why I'm saying you've paid that already. So therefore, you've got the credit for 42,000. So next year should be zero total going forward because you've already paid that money.
Denise, I see you've turned your video on. Did you want to add something there?
Yes, through the mayor, I think the best thing to do is to let this issue be discussed and council can be updated after the fact. There's probably a number of things that need to be contemplated. First, talk to your auditors. You also want to make sure that by zeroing out that you're going to create 100% increase in the following fiscal to that budget. So there are potentially other ways to manage this, whether you put something in a reserve, allocate it, but I think you should get financial advice in terms of determining how this should be listed in the GL on the budget.
I would concur with that. Just for the purpose of the budget, I was putting what we expect the actual cost to be, not the actual payouts at this point.
Yeah.
We are expecting a good year absolutely from this as a result.
So like Denise says, if you're not actually physically spending that money, it is a credit on your account. So it's not like it's going to offset future expenses. So to keep that budget line in there so that it isn't a 100% increase in the 2022.
Right.
And like Denise has suggested, you can keep that line item in there, but put that money into a reserve next year so that it balances out, you know, and you won't have 100% increase the following year for that line item.
Well, why don't we, because I know Trevor wants to get the budget approved. I mean, if everybody's satisfied with the balance of it, we could approve the budget sort of conditionally upon confirmation from the accountants with respect to the electricity line item.
I can live with that.
Is that okay with everybody? Because we're not meeting again before year end, so that at least allows them to move forward into the new year with an approved budget.
I'll move a motion to approve the budget on the condition that we get a report back on the electrical line.
Okay, excellent. Do I have a seconder for that? Board Member Anderson. Okay. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Carried. Excellent. Thank you. Anything else, Trevor, other than the property management report?
Do you want Donna to present the rest of the property management report?
Sure.
Trevor, I'll let you speak on the market rent increase.
Okay, so currently part of our funding model is designed that the rent increase this year is set at 1.5%. What happens is our funding is reduced by 1.5%, and the offsetting response is increase your rents by 1.5%, and you get all your money back. So it's revenue neutral. So we would be looking for a recommendation to approve that 1.5% rent increase. Our market rents are very fair. I know Premier Ford has indicated he wants to set it at 0% this year, but the advice from most service managers has been do the increase because we have to give 90 days notice for the increase. And if you have to rescind, then nobody's going to complain if they say your rent's not going up this year.
Okay. All right, so the recommendation is to increase the market rent by 1.5%. Do I have a mover for that? Board Member Buffett, seconder. Board Member Fegan. Any discussion on that? So we can change course on that ultimately if we decide, Trevor?
Absolutely. Very easy to do.
Okay. All right, all in favor? That's carried. Okay.
Okay, I'll turn over to Donna at this point.
So I will discuss the snow removal maintenance for the next 2 years. So we put a tender out last year. We received one quotation from Martin's Property Maintenance for 9,000 plus HST for the season. We're pleased with their performance last year. Under the county's guideline, we can enter into a contract for a 3-year term. So we have put it out to Martin's Property Maintenance if they'd like to renew for a 2-year term. They have agreed with the same price going forward and would like the board to ratify that decision.
Get a motion for that, get it on the floor, and then we can ask any questions. Board Member Hall, a seconder for that. Donato. All right. Any questions on that? Donna? Board Member Donato?
Is there a possibility of putting an option in there to renew it for a third year?
Just to go, well, we always have in the contract that that non-compliance or we can get out of any contract with a 60-day notice. But if you only want to go for one more year, that is fine.
Well, it's just if they've agreed to 2 years, maybe with an option as well to go for a third year, maybe, and see if we can go for the same price for a third year.
Oh, for a 3 year, going forward. 3 year.
Yeah.
I could definitely ask him for sure.
Okay.
I don't think at this point, with the everything that's going on, that the county would hold us to that we can only enter into a contract for 3 years. I think that going forward, they would probably permit this to happen.
Mhm. Okay. Any other questions on that? Okay, so the motion is to ratify the 2-year contract, but yeah, see if they're
I will see
interested.
if they'll enter into a 3.
Sure. Okay. All in favor? Carried. All right. Excellent.
Just going forward, I'm just following up with the vacancies that we've had since the last board meeting. And we've, sadly, it has been a little bit of a difficult time. We've had about 5 residents that have passed away, and one that has gone into a home of recent over the summer months. So, and they have been, for the most part, long-term residents. As you can see, 108, 17 years, heavy smoker. So a lot of refurbishment is required for that unit. Unit number 10, where resided for 5 years. We thought we had this unit rented for October 1st, but we've run into a glitch with this person that was moving in and have declined to move them in. And then there is the most recent one, a resident of 8 years. They have just recently passed away. Then there was page 8 was any contractors that have been involved with the property since the last board meeting, the work that was done, the costs. If anyone had any questions on that, the roof is complete. And I don't know, Trevor, did you want to speak on the domestic hot water?
Yeah, so we did meet at our last board meeting and discussed having the domestic hot water removed because we're having troubles. When we looked at it a little closer, we had a consultant come in who said the system was awesome. He said it was working very well. We've been told it was down. He said there were some systematic problems, like where the linkages, instead of having linkages between each system that would move in stormy weather, they were solid. So that's where we're getting leaks from. So he also was able to move, instead of having to take them right down at a high cost and high risk, we just literally moved them one side of the roof to the other. So we actually, during that time, his advice was, these things are generating $3,000 to $4,000 a year. It's only going to cost $500 to move one side of the roof to the other and put them right back on there. So it made most sense. And then the hot storage tanks were 10 years old. They were worth about $3,000 each. He said, if we move those to another location, he says, they're all full of sediment. They'll just be new. They'll need new tanks. So we really opted after that meeting with him, because he said it was working fine. He said he tweaked some things. We put the solar back at the highest point. We did reposition to put the solar at the highest, most maximum received thing. So the domestic hot water will be a little less efficient where it was, but it was also overproducing before. Like we mentioned in the summer months, it was overproducing hot water. So he said, okay, so we're going to lose 20% efficiency by lowering it. But he says lots of the year it works very, very well. So we opted, because it basically cost us $1,000 to move it from one side of the roof to the other and do some work on it, to just leave it where it was, because he just said it's a good system. So that was sort of in the spur of the moment, but we thought we had to take them right down, but the roofer was compliant. He let us move them, bolt them to another part of the roof. He did that side of the roof and then we moved them back. So.
All right, any questions on that? Okay. Is that it then for the property management report, Donna?
Yes,
Okay, can I get a mover and seconder to approve that report? Bonato and Wegener. All in favor? Carried. All right. Any new business?
One item, please.
Sure.
I would like to throw on the table for consideration. When the new council took over a year and a half ago, you might have remembered that our contract was up for renewal. So we extended it for 1 year, which was December. So it expired December 2018. We're now at December 2020, 2 years past the due. With COVID going on, I don't think it's reasonable to put out for tender, like from the perspective of we don't want people wandering through the building. So what we would be requesting is just a 2 year, to do a 2 year from December 2020 to December 2022. We are allowed up to 3 years, but just 2 years. And we have a 60-day out. So if next June, if COVID's over and we want to reconsider the contract, we could retender it. But the auditor is simply saying that you are out of date, and so our request would be to extend for 2 years from December 2020 to 2022 at a rate rather than a percentage of revenue, just to make it $26,400. If you look at our budget, that's basically what we've been charging the last couple of years, but it also guarantees what your costs are, guarantees what our revenues are. And next June, this could be reconsidered if COVID's over and we're back to normal, but this puts it off for 2 years, subject to the board's approval of that. It'd be the exact same contract, but just changing revenue from percentage to an actual number.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that timeline will sort of align with this term of council as well. So, I mean, it may make some sense in that respect. Any thoughts on that either way from any of the board members? No? Board member Hall?
Just that we would need to reflect it into the 2021 budget if it's 26.4 versus the current budget of 26.
We can make it 26,000. 26.4 was $2,200 a month. That's where the rationale came from. Just a round number, but we can make it 26,000. That would be slightly lower than before, but it's not material to Bayshore's perspective.
Okay. All right. You want a resolution?
Yes, please.
Okay. Somebody prepared to make a motion for that?
I'll move that we extend Bayshore's contractual budget that we extend Bayshore's contract until the end of this term of council, which is in 2022.
Seconder for that? Member Fegan. All right. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Carried. Excellent. Okay. Trevor, at the last meeting, we had talked briefly about the playground equipment.
Yep.
There, and I think Dan was going to take a look at it. Did that ever happen?
Donna?
we opened up the playground to the residents. We put up signage similar to what the signage was for the town playgrounds. We set up for the barbecue. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the mulch or anything like that because there's just contractors aren't really, especially playground contractors, weren't been running very much this year. So, but we made it available. We made the area available for the residents to sit at picnic table and to access the barbecue.
Okay. Well, maybe a bit of a refurbishment of that playground is something we can look at in the spring. If we do have a little bit of money left over in reserves at the end of this year, we can maybe do that to make it slightly more appealing for the residents. So
Yes.
Okay. Anything else under new business?
No.
Okay. Date of the next meeting. What are we looking at, guys?
Oh, sorry, we usually meet in January, so
Jennifer, what dates?
January 25th.
perfect.
Does that work? Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. We'll see you then.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn then? Member Hall, seconded by Member Fegan. All in favor? Carried. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in January.
Yes.
All right, so I call the regular council meeting to order. This meeting will be held electronically in accordance with section 238 sub 3.1 of the Municipal Act, which provides that a member of council of a local board or of a committee or either of them can participate electronically. In-person attendance of this meeting is not permitted. Members of the public may observe proceedings by accessing the live webcast on the Town of Shelburne YouTube page. Videos of previously recorded minutes or meetings rather are also archived there. So if somebody wants to go back and watch a previous meeting, those are available and they can do so at their leisure. So at this time, I would ask that everybody stand for the playing of the national anthem.
Sorry.
All right, thank you. And at this time, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. Before we get into disclosures, Councilor Wagner had brought it to my attention that October has been designated as Hispanic and Latin American Heritage Month. So we've prepared a formal declaration, which reads as follows. Whereas the Parliament of Canada recognizes that members of the Hispanic and Latin American community in Canada have made significant contributions to the social, economic, and political fabric of the nation. And whereas the designation of a month as Hispanic Latin American Heritage Month would be a meaningful way to remember, celebrate, and educate the public about these contributions. And whereas Hispanic and Latin American communities across Canada would be mobilized by a Hispanic Latin American Heritage Month to jointly celebrate, share, and promote their unique culture and traditions with all Canadians. And whereas the Latin American Heritage Month Act received royal assent on June 21st, 2018, proclaiming throughout Canada that the month of October be known as Latin American Heritage Month every year. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Wade Mills, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2020 as Hispanic Latin American Heritage Month in the town of Shelburne. So thanks again, Councillor Wagner, for raising that. And that takes us to disclosures of pecuniary interests. Are there any disclosures for this evening?
I have one, Mayor Mills, on the community grant discussions that was submitted in writing to the clerk.
Excellent. And I did see a copy of that. Yep. So thank you. Councillor Buffett, same thing.
Yes, similarly for the community grants, I noted my conflict of interest with the Rotary Club request for money.
Okay. And Councillor Wagner.
I also have one for the community grants regarding the agricultural request for money, as I sit on the board as a member.
Okay, excellent.
And Jennifer, I'll get you that email.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. So Madam Clerk, just as a matter of process then, when we go through those discussions, I guess all members will be present until we get to the individual line item that they've declared for. When it comes to a vote, how should we handle that? Should we vote on them individually then, or?
I would recommend you vote on them individually as you go through the list, so that once the councillors have left for those discussions, you vote, and then they can return to the meeting to participate in the remainder of the discussions.
All right, excellent. Okay, so on to the minutes from September 21st. Sorry. The 21st or the 24th?
First.
Yeah, so I think the draft recommendation mentions the 24th on the agenda. We'll just change that. Okay. All right, can I get a mover and seconder then for those minutes? Councillor Buffett, Deputy Mayor Anderson. Any discussion on those? All in favor? Carried. Excellent. Okay, public question period. Were there any questions submitted prior to the meeting?
No, Your Worship, there were no questions submitted for this evening.
Okay, so we do have a presentation this evening. So we are joined by Chair Alethea O'Hara-Stevenson and Vice Chair Althea Casamento of the Anti-Black Racism and Discrimination Task Force. And they are here this evening to present the work of the committee, as well as the list of recommendations that they've worked diligently to craft. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us. Good evening,
Thank
Mayor
you.
Mills, Deputy Mayor Anderson, council members, staff, and special guests. Just give me 30 seconds to share my screen, and then we'll get into tonight's presentation. Perfect. So on behalf of the Anti-Black Racism and Discrimination Task Force, Althea and I are honored to share the work of the task force and ultimately the blueprint that the task force worked on for the town of Shelburne. Before we dive into the presentation, I think it's very fitting that we take a moment to recognize the members of our community who were participant on this task force. So we have Mayor Mills, Deputy Mayor Anderson, of course, myself, Althea Casamento, Gear Harvey, who is a secretary, Simran Bamu, Bella Carter, Nathan King, Chief Moore, Cheyenne Ricci, Debbie Sipkema, Soha Solomon, Ken Topping, and Jay Wagstaff. I wanted to take this moment to recognize their efforts because a tremendous amount of work was put into developing this blueprint. We met every week for upwards of 2 hours from June 19th right up until last week to do some heavy lifting in terms of getting the recommendations in place for tonight's presentation. So it's important to acknowledge their efforts, as well as the efforts of staff members who were very present front and center to help us get to this point, most notably Carol with her expertise in developing our survey, as well as Jennifer for keeping us on track in terms of loading all of our meeting minutes and videos to the website. So a lot of work, a lot of support and contribution for everyone to get us to this point. So thank you very much. So the presentation itself is quite lengthy. I won't go through every single slide. We will touch on some of the key points, starting with the preamble and the objective of this task force. And you've all had the chance to review the document, and of course, council also had the opportunity to approve the terms of reference. But in terms of the preamble, essentially the obligation of government is to ensure that we're taking meaningful actions, in terms of the inequities impacting Black people, as well as other racialized and or marginalized groups faced in our community. The terms of reference, as I mentioned before, standard information that council previously approved. But I will take some time to go through the actual mandate of this task force because it is quite significant and it speaks to the work that we put together. So the Anti-Black Racism and Discrimination Task Force was created following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis and the subsequent Black Lives Matter protests in Shelburne and around the world, demanding police reform and the end to racism and systemic discrimination. The mandate is to bring together experts, community stakeholders, the public, and elected officials to come up with ways to address anti-Black racism and systemic racism in our community, and recommend to council a blueprint that will ensure that our community will be safe, inclusive, diverse, and welcoming to all. So with that, Althea will take you through a little bit of background about Shelburne and the fabric of what makes up Shelburne, and that will set the stage for the work that we put together in the task force. So Althea.
Awesome. I'm just going to tell you next when I'm ready. Okay, is that okay?
Awesome.
Perfect. So according to the 2016 census, our population is 8,126. And our growing and diverse population has a makeup of Blacks totaling 9.5%, South Asians totaling 4.9%, Indigenous totaling 2.2%, and the total visible minority population is 20.1%. Next. The town of Shelburne is part of the Upper Grand District School Board. The school board has 3 elementary schools and 1 high school. Elementary schools are Centennial Highland, Glenbrook, Highland Heights, and high school is Center Dufferin. Next, the town of Shelburne is home to a wide variety of churches. We have approximately 9 churches. The town also hosts a variety of businesses, including grocery stores, gas stations, specialized grocery stores, and many other local restaurants. Next, our tactical deliverables. The task force set out to accomplish a number of tactical deliverables. These deliverables are preparing a marketing plan, advertising it to show the objectives and the activities of the task force, creating a project plan that outlines all key deliverables and dates, documenting resident experiences around anti-Black racism and institutionalized racism and discrimination, identifying key barriers, measuring residents' awareness of town initiatives to promote anti-racism and inclusion and diversity, and evaluate resident experiences, key findings from our focus groups, survey results, stories, and delegations to the task force, and develop a set of recommendations for town council. Next, our marketing plan. The task force developed a marketing plan to ensure that we received maximum participation. The marketing plan included newspaper advertising, radio advertising, postcards that were mailed out to each household in Shelburne, social media advertising campaign, That included town social media pages, LCD screens, and websites, individuals who are active online, and each task force member actively promoting and sharing the survey.
Perfect, thank you, Althea. So the objectives of the task force were to document the residents' experience, identify key barriers racism creates in social, economic, and political life of residents in Shelburne, measure residents' awareness of town's initiatives to promote anti-racism, inclusion, and diversity, evaluate residents' experiences as it relates to these initiatives, report key findings, develop a set of recommendations. Surveys. So we conducted a survey that ran for approximately 3 weeks. And the surveys, of course, I mentioned previously, was developed with the help and collaboration of town staff. The survey was targeted into 2 key groups, focusing on students, and another component focusing on the adult population. The questions were generally the same, with a few unique questions that were designed specifically for each group. One of the major criteria for the survey was, of course, that participants had to either live or work in the town of Shelburne. And the questions were designed to cover demographics and respondents' experiences with racism and discrimination in our town. We had a focus group that was led by Simran Bamu, and a number of our task force members participated in capturing keynotes. So the focus groups were held over 2 days, and we had about 4 to 6 participants in each survey group, and the time lasted approximately 90 minutes each. The sessions were recorded with consent from the participants, and notes were taken to ensure that we captured key points from each of the survey participants. We had a number of delegations and presentations to the task force from community stakeholders. So we had presentations from DCAF, as well as individual community members sharing their own unique experiences. Where the organizations didn't have specific data that was relevant for Shelburne, they were able to share some of the initiatives and steps that they have put in place as a result of the tragic events surrounding the death of George Floyd, and these have all helped to shape the recommendations that we will go through shortly. So as I mentioned before, we had DCAF, we had Upper Grand District School Board, we had Shelburne Worship Center, Compass Community Church, we had a representative from the Indigenous community, Muslims of Dufferin, FTP, One Voice, One Team, Streams Hub, individual community member, Andrew Cunningham, as well as FTP from FTP as well participated. We had a number of stories that were submitted online, 6 stories actually in total, and individuals had the option to either submit your stories anonymously or publicly. And so we had a lot of great context that was provided through the sharing of these stories, as well as individual stories from task force members. So we had an opportunity to hear firsthand some of the experiences that our own members had while living in Shelburne, as well as general experiences, just being individuals in the community as a whole.
Okay.
Findings and results, go ahead.
The following section details our findings. Situation assessment: Shelburne is not immune to racial discrimination and marginalization. The racial discrimination and marginalization takes many forms. Next. Some findings were asking clarification from a person of color in the bank due to high account balance. Racialized kids are treated differently in school environments. Racialized students also indicated a fear of speaking up about some of these instances of discrimination, and a dismissal of students who actually spoke up about their racial discrimination. The town policing engaging in racial profiling. Rumors that an employer in the town does not entertain job applications from persons of color. Individual reports cases of numerous harassment, forcing that individual to move, and discrimination witnessed at several parks in the town between children. Next. The situation assessment provides a picture about the nature and the frequency of incidents occurring around racial discrimination. The situation also highlights the the pressing need for effective solutions. Next. Overall, there's a lack of awareness regarding town initiatives designed to promote anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion in the town. Lack of marketing and promotional efforts by the town results in poor outreach and participation by residents. Need to educate around promoting diversity and sensitivity towards incidents involving racism and discrimination. Participants expressed concerns regarding lack of person of color in interview panels for town jobs, lack of representation from different ethnicities and backgrounds in local police, and lack of support for religious activities for different ethnicities.
So in summary, through the delegations, focus groups, stories, and surveys, more instances of racism were revealed than anticipated. Shelburne is not immune. Based on the information gathered from our focus group and the presentation, it is clear that there is areas for closer inspection and appropriate action. Shelburne simply needs to act. There is considerable concern, anxiety, anger, and felt discrimination by many organizations and situations in our town by citizens of all ages. And these experiences are mainly felt by the Black community. However, not to say that other communities were not impacted, we just don't have the data to support other communities at this stage. And as such, further studies is recommended that is conducted to ensure greater participation from a diverse group of individuals to be able to gather much richer data. Many participants expressed concerns over the lack of diversity and representation in the school board, town of Shelburne, including the police, town office, library, parks, and various committee boards. Some of the presenters acknowledged the lack of diversity across the county as a whole, not just in Shelburne. Very few concerns were raised regarding discrimination experience with neighbors and people on the street, which is good news. And likewise, very few acts of physical violence related to racism was reported. While there have been several positive changes to tackle inclusion, racism, and discrimination, such as the Black Lives Matter March, the establishment of this task force, the seed flag raising ceremony, the 2 SLGBTQ+ flag raising ceremony, recognition of Black History Month, and like what we heard tonight, recognition of Latin Heritage Month is, great steps, but there is still more work to be done in our community. And I'd like to echo our mayor's words again, in the height of the pandemic, in the height of the uproar and, the issues, impacting, the Black community and marginalized communities globally, he simply stated, words alone are simply no longer enough. Words alone cannot bring about the fundamental and systemic change that is needed now. I can do better, we all can do better. And as a result, council members, I implore you to take action in regards to the recommendations that you're about to hear. So the recommendations, again, are a summary of what we've heard from the delegations, the stories, and the surveys and focus groups. The recommendations have been categorized into short-term, medium-term, and long-term objectives for the town of Shelburne to action and/or implement. Short-term being 3 to 6 months, medium-term being 6 to 12 months, and long-term being 12 to 24 months.
A short-term, sorry, I'm on mute. Sorry. Short-term recommendations is the town of Shelburne to participate in the coalition of municipalities against racism and racial discrimination. Town to join the declaration of the Canadian Coalition of Municipalities Against Racism and Discrimination, develop an action plan to implement the changes identified in the recommendations, develop a work plan on the town website, and document the progress of the recommendations that have been submitted to council by the task force. Town to adopt an anti-racism and anti-oppression policy statement that is posted publicly. Town website content will be more reflective of the diverse community. The town to encourage and support its partners such as the library, faith groups, CDRC, and service clubs to provide programs, offerings, and events that reflect the diversity of the community. The town website will add a feature to allow visitors to have content translated into different languages, again reflective of the community. Town to utilize existing space for art to be displayed, such as town hall. And the art will be representative of the diverse community as well. Town to support diversity initiatives in our community, including acknowledgements of significant days, dates, and events. Establish a safe space for marginalized groups to come together. The town to resume the Arts and Culture and Entertainment Committee and quarterly newsletters from council highlighting important events and celebrations. Some medium-term recommendations, which are 6 to 12 months. The town to work with the BIA and EDC to provide mentoring, support, and/or grant funds to support potential new BIPOC-owned startups within the community. The town to set aside community grant fundings for our BIPOC youth who may be interested in putting on programs and events for the community. Share task force recommendations with the Shelburne Police Board or the OPP service. The town to ensure that all town-sponsored events promote the values of diversity and inclusion, encouraging event organizers who are hosting public events to uphold the values of diversity and inclusion. A town to put the links of all established formal complaint process onto the town website and establish a liaison person from the town who could help navigate citizens to the appropriate contact or resource. Town council and staff need to engage in diversity and equity and inclusion training. The training should be ongoing and should be mandatory for all staff. The town to ensure that hiring practices have a diversity and equity lens. The town to complete an equity survey every 2 years by a third-party agency. The town to review policies through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. The town to work with the BIA and Dufferin Board of Trade to create an info brochure that illustrates to businesses how DEI work impacts their bottom line, plus a slogan, sticker, and education booklets promoting diversity and inclusion.
In terms of long-term recommendations, the town to work with local faith groups to secure spaces where they can meet, recognizing that there are several local churches and everyone's competing for space. There's a strong recommendation that council puts into consideration for future planning to ensure that you're looking at potential spaces where local faith groups can meet. That includes for service as well as for burial grounds. So this is a need of some of our community members, and it's important that this is considered for future planning. The town of Shelburne to establish a diversity, equity, and inclusion position to focus on the ongoing work of diversity, equity, and inclusion work in our community. This is something that many other municipalities, Vaughan as an example, has established a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, or Upper Grand District School Board also recently posted a position for equity work, and many organizations are moving towards establishing a permanent position focusing on the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it is important that we take the approach of looking at forming such a position to ensure that we're able to continue with the work, the great work that we've already started on with this task force. Understanding that budgetary constraints, may be a factor. So there's an opportunity for having a third-party agency that we mentioned previously to come in and take on some of this work in the short term. We can hire them for, a short-term basis, whether it's every year or for a short period of time to come in and look at some of our policies and making sure that we're set up for success. We also need to establish a process or a policy to ensure that BIPOC individuals are given recognition for their contributions to our community, i.e. naming of buildings, street signs, lanes, monuments, etc., including our history, such as the Gantt family. And this includes, when builders are coming into town, there is something there that allows them to be able to put street names up or street signs up, recognizing the great contributions of not just the BIPOC, not just the Black community, but the BIPOC community across the board. Another recommendation is to enhance the existing walking trails with markers of our history and culture. And this is another great way to show the diversity of our community. This is another great community engagement activity that all can participate in. Our youth, are active, their active voice has asked for things that they can do in our community, one of which is walking trails. So enhancing the existing trails with historical markers would be a great benefit and a great tourist attraction as well for our community. Sponsor or develop scholarships highlighting diversity and inclusion. Again, it could be simple as, to emulate leadership behaviors that the students are demonstrating. Town to support local cultural, social, sport clubs and or events. And I know many of you participated in the inaugural cricket match. Initiatives like that, are important. So I encourage the town to continue with events like that. Host a quarterly town hall open forum meeting with community members. And this is simply to discuss current initiatives, current topics. It could be, for example, talking about COVID. Just have an open session where community members can participate and hear some of the things that are impacting them. And they can ask questions directly to council members, things that are important to the community. Town to appoint an individual as an honorary member of council to represent the needs of the diverse community, if not elected, with non-voting rights. So again, just looking around council chambers, it is important to recognize that council does not reflect the diversity of the community. So the request is to consider the options of electing a non-voting member to be able to have that voice and share the different perspectives of the growing and diverse community of Shelburne. Other recommendations for the community in general, local businesses and organizations should complete training via workshops on anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion training in business practices. Event organizers should reevaluate their practice to include vendors, businesses owned by people from different ethnic and cultural backgrounds in events in town. Individuals in general within our community need to look within and broaden their horizons. Individuals need to meet people as people and not judge based on race, background, or other. Just meet people simply as people. Recommendations specifically for the school board: to establish a more transparent and accountable formal complaint process for the local schools that is audited. Teachers, staff should reflect the diverse community of the student population. Programs that encourages cultural foods and events into the schools. Staff will create a monitored safe space for children in the school, for them to feel safe in talking, sharing their stories, and for connecting with others. Students have expressed a need to have a space where they can express and share instances of discrimination. They have also expressed the need to have a space where they can connect for cultural events or any extracurricular activities that are of a diverse nature and caters to, again, the diverse population. So again, the recommendation is for the school board to provide such a space for their students. Other recommendations for the school, again, much like what has been recommended for the town, allow young artists to be able to display their cultural art on an ongoing basis, to be able to have their own central space to exhibit their art. Schools should ensure that materials, whether it's books, programming, is included in the curriculum that highlights the different contributions, the different ethnic backgrounds in science, arts, literature, sports, etc., from diverse individuals. And hopefully my video will work. I'm just going to pause and see if it will work for me. No, it's not. So essentially the video, oh, maybe it is. So essentially the video is an image of the bear walking by, and it simply speaks to the bear is picking up the cone. He's not walking by and leaving it for someone else to do. It's essentially talking about discrimination is everyone's problem, so we need to fix it. So unfortunately, I'm not able to play the video. Oh, here we go. I just needed to be patient. Perfect, and that's essentially the video, and Althea can speak to this quote.
Using Deputy Mayor Steve Anderson's words that we should really focus on is, we can no longer walk by and ignore racism. We must stop and do something about it. We must fix it, make it right. Okay. Top 5 priorities: the town of Shelburne to deliver an action plan to implement the changes identified in the recommendations. The town of Shelburne to develop a work plan on the town website and document the progress of all the recommendations. Establish a safe space for marginalized groups to come together. The town to put the links to all established formal complaint process on the town website and establish a liaison person from the town who can help navigate citizens to the appropriate contacts or resources. The town to establish a diversity, equity, and inclusion position to focus on the ongoing work of diversity, equity, and inclusion work in our community.
Perfect, thank you. And that brings us to the end of our presentation, and we wanted to pick out the top 5 items that if council has a dire need to just focus on 5, these are the 5 that as a committee we thought would be the critical ones to focus on. Overall, the entire list of recommendations, we've broken them out in a way that is achievable for the town to accomplish. But considering budget and other factors, staff availability as well, we recognize that not everything may will be able to accomplish within the timeframes. So we've highlighted these top as priorities for the town to consider. With that, that brings us to the end of our presentation. And again, I'd like to leave you with this quote: when Shelburne stands together, we are stronger together. So thank you very much, and I'll stop sharing. Does anyone have any questions for Althea or I?
All right, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Bonato, you're muted there too, Walter.
I knew that. Just a quick question on the upward recommendations for the school board. Are you going to present them to the Upper Grand Board of Education? Are you going down there to present to them so that they know the recommendations for the town?
Absolutely. So in fairness, the Upper Grand District School Board was part of the delegations. They presented their recommendations to us. So in return, we will be sharing the town's recommendations with them, as well as the specific recommendations that were outlined for them. The process will be to go through Cheryl and Jessica. They were the delegates. And then from there, I believe there is there is an expectation that a further presentation could be done to the trustees at a later date. So the immediate action would be to follow up with Jessica and Cheryl to share this presentation with them, and they can guide us further.
Any other questions or comments? I have some, but I'll wait till the end. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I just want to commend every member on the task force for all their hard work and what truly came together tonight. So obviously we still have challenges that lay before us, but as council, we have that obligation to our residents, and that is to ensure that we take action. So again, I look forward in supporting the initiatives that were presented tonight.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll make a comment, Mayor Mills. I want to echo the sentiments by Alethea in thanking the team that worked really hard, as she mentioned, from day one to just last week, as she pointed out. There was a lot of heavy lifting that was done. We are certainly proud of the participation. Whether it was community stakeholders or members responding to the survey or the focus groups. I think to a person on the task force, it really opened our eyes to the issues that we face, and whether we were aware of the extent of the issues, the breadth and the scope of the issues, but it really forced us to sort of dig deep and to acknowledge and listen, as Alethea pointed out, to these painful stories that were mentioned. But there are a lot of positive things, and I do want to emphasize this because I think this is important. The town of Shelburne has come a long way. There's a lot of work that has been done, a lot of great work that has been done. But what the task force has pointed out, as Alethea and Althea pointed out, that there's still work to be done. So, I look forward, as Councillor Hall put it, to take action, meaningful action, because if we don't do that, this whole process would have been a waste of time. So, again, I look forward to having an opportunity to discuss the recommendations, and I know Mayor Mills will speak to that and implement it as soon as we can. So thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. Well, I too, want to thank Alethea and Althea and the rest of the members on the task force. I mean, we had some long meetings, and it wasn't always easy to hear what was being said, but I think it was critically important to to give those individuals and those groups the forum to speak freely and speak honestly about the experiences that they've had. One of the discussions, just for the benefit of council, one of the discussions that we had during a few of the focus group meetings, I think, was the difference between symbolic action and actual, real change. And I think that kind of speaks to the quote, Alethea, from myself, that you had pulled out, that, we're at a point in time where words alone, just simply are no longer enough. I mean, we do have to take some concrete steps and implement, systemic change to address, what is still obviously a problem. I plan on staying true to those words, and I expect that you folks will hold me accountable to that. Going forward, I do want to move quickly on this, but I don't want to move hastily. So what I would suggest is that, as a matter of procedure, that tonight council receive the recommendations. I want to give everybody ample opportunity to kind of give all of this stuff the due consideration that it deserves. Think it through, allow staff the same opportunity. And then what I would like to see is council reconvene, either in the form of a special meeting or at an upcoming council meeting where the agenda isn't overly heavy, where we can dedicate some time to going through these recommendations one by one, and deciding how best to carry them forward. So Jennifer, perhaps you and I and staff can look at the calendar over the next little while and find a date that works to do that. And then we can, start putting some action to the recommendations that the group has made. So does that sound fair? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, with that, then I would ask for a mover and seconder to receive the presentation as presented and circulated from the Anti-Black Racism and Discrimination Task Force. Okay, I've got Councillor Buffett, seconded by Councillor Bonato. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Carried. Excellent. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you very much.
Have some rest
Thank
this
you.
Thursday night.
Definitely.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, council inquiries. Are there any inquiries this evening? Councillor Fegan.
This is a question more for Jim Moss, really. Jim, I understand that you had a chance to talk to the company of Clean Oil, which I believe I gave you a contact for, which was a company that has a product that potentially could save us some significant money on oil changes and that sort of thing. Just wondering if you had a chance to meet with them and what your impression was of the company.
Through your worship, yes, I did have a chance to meet with them either early last week or the week before outside town hall there. We did run over the product. It's an auxiliary filter that they supply. It's about $850 for the filter. It's about 8-inch diameter canister that would be connected to or bolted to the frame. And it's a 1-micron filter, so it has a slow feed of oil that goes through it as a supplement to the normal oil filter on vehicles. The 1-micron filter, it's that much tighter a weave that it just filters more stuff out. So they did give me a number of companies and towns or cities that were using the filters over a long period of time. There's the city of Barrie, city of Toronto. Apparently Hydro One puts it on all of their vehicles. You can also use it on the hydraulic lines too, which was I even found more interesting. The dirtier hydraulic fluid gets over time, that's where you get your blowouts on hoses, on corners, lines, with the dirt more or less wears away at the hydraulic lines and just blows them out over time. So if we wanted to go with both oil and hydraulics, the hydraulic does take a little bit more rigging. They had to put on an additional valve. That would be approximately $2,000 per vehicle. They figure extend your oil change periods out to about 3 times the normal interval, which is 5,000 kilometers normally. So about 15 to 18,000 kilometers, and then they'll come in and they'll actually sample the oil. There's a little bleed valve that they can take a sample off of it and send it away and gauge how much more you can get out of that. With long haul truckers, they're getting into, they've claimed somewhere in the hundreds of thousands before they did oil changes. But yeah, it could be put on the trucks for about $2,000 to do both. And then you also can put it on other equipment too, loaders, backhoes, tracklesses, that sort of thing. So,
do you think this is something that we should investigate? What was your impression of the actual product itself? Does it have value that we look at?
Jim?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I have to interject here. I appreciate the question, but certainly we can't have a discussion about a company like this in a public forum. And I respectfully have to ask you that if you would like us to look at a competitive process, to look at any efficiencies with respect to operations, we're certainly happy to do that.
Okay. Any other inquiries?
I have about three quick ones here, if you don't mind. The first is a follow-up to a motion that I brought previously on the bus shelter and a report back from staff as to the cost. And I know it was recent, but I just want to get a sense of from staff how soon we can get that report back and whether it's possible if we can get that information presented to us at the next meeting. So that's item number one. Number two, by way of reporting as well, for a while, myself and Councilor Bonato has asked for a report on the cost of a tennis court. I would like to see a report come back. I would also ask at the next meeting, if not at the meeting following that, we are in the midst or approaching or fast approaching budget discussions, and I'd like to have that information again, if not the next meeting, the one after that. And then lastly, if it's possible, if we get some information regarding staff, or from staff rather, on the Victoria Street cleanup. I know that a report was supposed to be coming back, I believe this month. And so if we get an indication as to when we could expect that report coming to council.
Denise?
Through the mayor, I think I can answer almost all of them. The bus shelter, I apologize. We are reviewing the bus shelters based on a number of companies that provide that service. I can say we were planning to include those costs in the 2021 budget. The price range that we're looking at currently is anywhere between $6,000 and $15,000 per unit, plus installation and plus maintenance. So we'll outline all of that. What we have learned from many of our colleagues that operate transit systems is that during COVID-19, bus shelters have been cordoned off or taped off for any use because you can't physically distance within the units. So we'll certainly provide a report on all of the costs associated with that. With respect to the tennis court, we actually included it as an estimate in the 2021 draft budget, which council will be receiving. Our cost estimate at this time is approximately $200,000, including site preparation, and the treasurer will be listing all of that in the budget. We also, in the budget framework, had added an additional levy and surcharge for capital, and that was one of the areas that were going to be included within that budget. And with respect to Victoria Street, we're still looking at the costs associated with the remediation that we had to deal with. I know I had suggested that we'd have a report back. I'm now pushing that off to probably December or to early January, unfortunately, for 420.
Okay, so I want to make sure that I understand. You're saying that the tennis court and the bus shelter costing will be provided during budgetary discussion. Is that what you're saying? So that won't come prior to that?
Yeah, so through the 2021 draft budget, both of those items would be included we had already embedded the tennis court as per the direction for tennis pickleball into the capital budget for 2021. The bus shelters were new and we're still doing research on that, and we'll provide the costing because it'll be we assumed a 2021 budget issue because we certainly don't have the money this year to, if a shelter is $15,000 and there would be two of them now with the change in location. I mean, again, the council's direction on those costs, but we'll have those as part of, I mean, there'll be a 2021 budget, but certainly if council directs us to expend that money in 2020, it can be done.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Just before we jump off of that, Denise, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but the bus shelters that you're looking at, are they the sort that could be moved?
Through your worship, we've looked at a number of different options. Again, what we need to do is provide council with an overview of the costs. Are they, for that point, are they portable? How much is it to install them? And also the maintenance costs, because when the snow gets in them, we have to clear them. We have to make sure that the sidewalk or the area in front of them. We're also fully aware right now that the locations that we've just implemented to address some of the pull-off challenges that the drivers were having for safety reasons, they may need to be moved again. We've certainly just found this location to ensure an immediate response to those concerns. Our initial reaction, though, is that those two new locations would not be great with respect to the space that's available to install a bus shelter that may potentially be 7 feet, I don't know how many meters that is, or longer.
Okay.
So we're certainly will evaluate all of that, but we'd like to actually ensure that we get enough information from conventional transit operators that have cautioned off the access to any bus shelters during COVID-19.
Okay. All right. Any other inquiries? Councilor Bernardo?
Quick one for Jim. I noticed that on the sidewalk repairs, the Canfield walkway was one of the ones coming up for repair. When will those be happening?
Through your worship, Brad, our public works supervisor, was in touch with CMG Concrete today. They're looking at the next couple of weeks coming in, so we're coordinating that, especially the Canfield job, with our fencing contractor, since the sidewalk crew, they don't do fences, so we're coordinating that with them too, and they'll have to move in, do the tear out of that section of that is in there now, do the rebasing, then they're going to come in and do the fencing, then pour the concrete after that. So, but they are looking at the next couple of weeks.
So if they're going to be doing it within the next couple of weeks, how far ahead are we notifying the residents that are going to be affected, properties, because of the fencing?
Actually, staff is working on those notices right now to go out immediately. So this week, just to give them a heads up on that for all locations, not just Canfield, but specifically that one, because there is fencing involved with it too, just to let them know that for a short period there, they'll have to watch their dogs or whatnot if they're letting them run in the backyards of that area. So.
Yeah, I know one of the residents does have a fairly large dog. The other part is the cedar trees on the one side where the fencing, they're fairly tall. I know I've spoken to both homeowners and they've indicated that they don't have an issue with the trees being cut down so that there's better lighting on that walkway. Is that something we can discuss with the homeowners when they're doing the fencing in that area?
Yeah, we can discuss that if we need to remove some limbs or whatnot there for the installation of the fence as well. We were looking at a little more illumination in there too, because it is pretty dark. So we have a pole down at the public works yard that we were going to install there, and budget to put in a solar light in that area just so we don't have to run hydro.
So that I don't have to pick up beer cans every weekend when I walk through there.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jim. Okay, so on to the reports. First report is from our town planner regarding an application for site plan approval at 485378 30 Side Road.
Thank you, Mayor Mills, and I apologize, everybody. I don't have my camera with me tonight. I do have a few slides though, and I will screen share that now just to provide some of the drawings that accompany this site plan application. Okay, can you see the presentation okay? All right. So this is site plan application SPA 2002 filed by GOT Enterprises, Inc., operating as Blue Mountain Plastics on the subject property at 485387 Dufferin County Road 11. You'll recall over the summer there was a minor variance application that came to the Committee of Adjustment, and one of the conditions of that minor variance approval was an approval of a site plan application. So the purpose of tonight's report is to present the site plan details that have been provided by the applicant. Just to recap, this is the location of the subject property, and there are two buildings on the property. The main larger building, which houses the majority of Blue Mountain Plastics operations, and the second smaller building, which is the white building in the northwest corner of the property. And the proposal through this site plan amendment is primarily about basically doubling the size of that building. So adding an addition to the west of the existing building, as shown here. I just pulled the previously approved 2017 site plan. So the building that you see highlighted in red, the smaller building that was built around 2018, was approved through a site plan amendment by the previous council in 2017. So this is the site plan that currently sits on title to the property as the approved site plan. And I've just highlighted the other current key elements of the site as they are shown on the current approved site plan, which is, of course, the main building shown in yellow, the stormwater management facility. In 2017, the drainage swale from the north building running along that blue line to the stormwater pond was added to provide a drainage outlet for the roof drainage and surrounding grade area to the stormwater facility. And there were some minor changes to the parking area and loading area to the west of the existing building. Some parking spaces were added to the west of the new building in the back northwest corner of the property. So this is a highlighted version of the proposed site plan amendment that has been submitted. You can see in orange, I've highlighted the proposed building addition. So again, taking that existing second building and adding that amount of floor area again. It would be added, of course, in a way that will make it look as one continuous building. They won't be two distinct parts. They'll be basically blended together as one building. Other than that, there aren't any really significant changes. There's a couple of small things that I wanted to highlight. There are some clean out works and minor stormwater management facility works required. And I believe a ditch clean out at the county ditch outlet, which ultimately receives the flow from the stormwater pond. And then over in the paved loading / parking area, they are adding some parking spaces on the west edge of that parking area, essentially to make up for the spaces that are lost as a result of putting the building addition where it's proposed. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight is just this purple area, which is the, currently there's a truck weigh station. I go back to the previous plan, it's here. It's a bit further west and north than the proposed location. So the new one would be located further southeast. Only concern with that's been raised through the review is we still need a fire route, which is this route identified here. So just making sure the fire route is still adequate within this area with the relocation of the weigh station. So that's a county comment that we've received from the building department that we will need to work through with the applicant. As one of the conditions of the minor variance approval was the submission of an acoustic assessment report to measure the noise from the facility and model the noise anticipated as a result of the addition. The addition doesn't add any processes or noise generating activities that don't already exist on the site, and in fact is located in a way that it's further away from the closest point of sensitive receptors. This is just one of the figures provided in the report done by the noise consultant. What it illustrates is the noise contours as you go further away from the operations. The darker red, orange, and yellow lines are where the highest noise levels are experienced. And then as you go out, getting into the green and blue lines, that's where they go down. The key number for the ministry requirements is 50 decibels. So if you're at a daytime sound level of greater than 50 decibels, you're exceeding the ministry sound level limits. If that's the case at certain points on a residential property or at the plane of a window to a sensitive space like a bedroom. So what this shows is that there are 5 sensitive receptors that were measured and modeled as part of this. They're labeled around the facility. The residential area on Franklin Street to the northwest, the existing school to the north of the KTH facility, the residential area on Woodland Road in Sylvan Woods to the east, the residential area to the southeast on Devonley Drive, and then there is one rural residence directly to the south as well along Second Line. And what they've shown is the modeled worst case noise experiences at each of those receptor locations. And you can see they are all under the 50 decibel sound limit. They also modeled it for the nighttime operations based on a worst case noise output from the facility. And they were able to demonstrate that with the reduced operations during the nighttime sound level limits are also met. So just something we wanted to make sure that we were carefully looking at as part of the site plan approval as the facility grows and intensifies, that it's not going to introduce, greater or intensified sound levels or exceed ministry sound level limits at the residential areas nearest. The sound report is also a requirement of the environmental compliance approval for the facility. So this is directly with the Ministry of Environment by Blue Mountain Plastics as well. So in order to allow that work to proceed, and Blue Mountain Plastics is looking to advance some of the site works and maybe even some of the initial building construction still this year, they do need an amendment to the site plan and the site plan agreement. So we have in the report, in the agenda tonight, included a authorizing bylaw that would authorize basically for us to work with the town's legal counsel, the applicant and engineering consultants to finalize that agreement. And once all the final drawings are received and address the engineering review comments from the town, then that agreement would be finalized. There would be a letter of credit to secure the satisfactory performance of the work. Then that agreement could be authorized or executed by the mayor and the clerk. And so that's the purpose of the bylaw and the amending agreement tonight, is just to get that authorization so that once those conditions are fulfilled, those steps can be completed. And then beyond that, there's a municipal approval and a building permit that will be required. There may be some initial site work that can take place before the building permit is obtained, but the construction of the building itself will be under that building permit process. Once finalized, that amending agreement will go on title and will supplement or amend all the prior site plan agreements that have been approved for the site. In my report, I have summarized, I'll just stop sharing the presentation. But in the report, I have summarized all of the comments received through the circulation to date. SBA is still completing their edit, have an initial preliminary review, and has not indicated any kind of make or break type comments that would fundamentally change the plan. So there will be some details to be finalized at a technical level prior to allowing them to go forward. Other than that, the other comments I have responded to are addressed as part of our report and through information supplied by the applicant. So at this point, if there's any questions or comments from council, I'm happy to try and answer them for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Are there any questions? No. Okay, so we have a draft motion that reads, be it resolved, the council receives report P 2020-16 as information, and that site plan application SPA 20-02 be approved subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the owner enter into a site plan amending agreement with the town of Shelburne. And number two, that the owner shall submit a final site plan drawings and information addressing review comments to the satisfaction of the town engineer. And that leave be given for the reading and enacting of bylaw number 49-2020, being a bylaw to enter into a site plan amending agreement with Barlow Trail Investments, Inc. for the industrial development of the property at 108 Prentice Drive. Mover and seconder for that. Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Buffett. All in favor? Carried. All right, thanks, Steve.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, take care. So next we have a report from SBA regarding well 7 and 8 pump replacements. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great.
Good.
So I won't obviously go through the entire report, but just to give a brief summary, we are bringing the report in front of council just for blessing for moving ahead with the pump replacement at well 7 and 8. As a just quick brief summary for council's benefit, because it has been a while since we came forward with this information. There was the need to replace the pumps at well 7 and 8, just because when previous testing was completed to try and run the wells together, we could not quite achieve the level that was anticipated through computer modeling and through the work done due to limitations on the pumps themselves. So we did recommend replacement of the pumps. It did go out to invited tender. The report is attached from that tender submission and the recommendation. And ultimately, the pricing was within the previously established budget, and would recommend moving forward with this work so that we could retest running well 7 and 8 together.
Okay. We had budgeted 300 for that, I think.
Correct, Mayor.
All right. Okay, any questions for Steve? Okay. The mover and seconder for the motion that reads, be it resolved, the council receives report SBA 2020-06 regarding well 7 and 8 pump replacement from Burnett and Associates dated October 5th, 2020, as presented and circulated, and that well initiatives be awarded the 2020 contract for the well 7 and 8 pump replacement for $288,260.74 or $255.98 plus HST. Moved by Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Bernardo. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Take care. All right, next we have a report from our Director of Development and Operations regarding a notice of motion dealing with no stopping zone on Jane Street. Jim, do you want to take us through that report?
Sure. Through your worship. Back at the September 14th council meeting, there was a request to bring back a report to the October 5th meeting on investigating the creation of a no stopping zone on the north side of Jane Street from Owen Sound to Willow Street. The root of the request was to present a solution to parking issues at a business and to prevent the backup of traffic on Jane Street back onto our high traffic Owen Sound Street, or the connecting link. Jane Street, along with several other streets in the immediate area, were upgraded from open ditches to a curb and gutter model in the early 2012-2013 area and completed around 2015. This allowed for paved parking areas on the north and south side shoulders of Jane Street between Owen Sound and Willow. On the north side of Jane Street, there's also a Canada Post mailbox there as well, which can be seen in Appendix 1. Staff did perform a site visit for the potential of a no stopping zone to solve this congestion issue and receive feedback from the business owner at the location. The property owner was not in favor of the no stopping zone. He was very concerned about hurting his business. If clients couldn't stop in front of the store, especially in the one direction, this would also cause some issues for Canada Post, loading those mailboxes and residents picking up their mail. They'd have to walk down from Willow Street. There is, as mentioned before, a paved apron on both sides of Jane Street, most of the way between Owen Sound and Willow. The north side parking area can be seen again in Appendix 1. This does show that the town road allowance does start in the location of the mailboxes and the hydro poles in the photos. Appendix 2 is just another satellite photo from Dufferin County that shows the highlighted property lines. The business owner is aware that he is encroaching on the town road allowance there with the produce and the awning structure that he has for sheltering the plants during the summer months, as shown in Appendix 3. This substantially is reducing the available off-street parking in front of the store. When patrons do stop, they're stopping in the live lane of traffic and essentially parking right in that lane. The owner of the property is aware that he's using the road allowance there. These sales items and structure were removed from the road allowance, there would be sufficient parking to resolve the backup onto Owen Sound Street without the no stopping zone. This would also allow for continued ease for the mailboxes for Canada Post and residents picking up their mail. Staff was suggesting that a letter be sent to the property owner requesting the removal of the material from the road allowance within 30 days. The property owner, at the time when I met with him there last week, just before preparing this report, did see that as the best option that he had. Currently, the property owner is out of standing with the setbacks for the town's municipal zoning bylaw. And to move forward with a no stopping zone, staff will need to amend the traffic bylaw 8-1983. In preparation with this report, there was consultation with our Director of Legal Legislative Services, our clerk, for zoning information, and our bylaw enforcement officer for traffic enforcement options. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. The business owner had reached out to me over the weekend, and I think also spoke to at least one member of staff this morning. So myself and Councillor Fegan took a quick visit over there today to speak to him. It seems that, at least the immediate issue is probably going to be a bit of a moot point because he shuts down for the season in early November, moves the canopy back off the town property anyways. But I mean, with the business not being open, there won't be any cars stopping there. So I appreciate you getting the report together as quickly as you did, Jim. I'm just wondering that if we have the luxury of time on our side over the course of the winter, with the business being closed, if we maybe defer any decision on action at this point, just to engage in some more consultation with the business owner, put our heads together too as a group and see if there's some other solutions that might present themselves that would be less detrimental to his business. He really felt as though having to pull back that portion of the canopy as shown on the map back to the lot line really diminishes the amount of usable area that he has to market his flowers in the spring and the summer, and his pumpkins and fall produce and whatnot in the fall season. So again, it's just I don't think we have to rush to any sort of decision tonight, and I would prefer to maybe take a bit more of a measured approach going forward, and let's see if there are possibly other solutions that are available that would be a little less impactful on his business. Councillor Fegan, do you want to add anything else from our chat this afternoon?
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. The one point that the business owner did make as well this afternoon, and I fully agree with him. I've been living in the subdivision myself for the past 10 years, and I have seen, even before he put that awning up, the natural tendency for visitors of his location is still to park on the laneway itself rather than actually pull off the side of the road, even when that space is available. So I'm not really sure removing that awning is going to really do what we hope it does, or what we would hope that it would. I think there's still an education piece here that we need to sort of educate the public a little bit more about the dangers of what's there. I'm certainly very open to deferring this to a later date and certainly investigating all options and making sure that we can support the business owner as well as support the community at the same time.
Any comments from any other members of council or staff? I mean, Jim, do you see a major problem in holding off on a decision?
Through your worship, no. The property owner did mention to me that usually the end of October, early part of November, he does shut down and does remove that first section of awning back to the second post that you can see in the photo, just for snow removal and everything else. So the guys don't have to worry about hitting it with the wings of the truck or anything like that. So no, within the next month or so, the urgency won't be there again until next spring for us to look at it. So. Okay.
All right, then I'll make a motion then that we just receive the report 2020-04 from the Director of Development and Operations as presented and circulated, and no further action at this time. I get a seconder for that. Councillor Hall. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Thanks, Jim.
No problem.
Okay, so the next item is a resolution from the Police Services Board. And essentially what the concern was, it was raised, I think, by a few members of the public as well as some members of the Shelburne Police Service, that over the course of the summer there seemed to be a habit of some young folks congregating around the CCAN portable storage unit at the back of Greenwood Park that's used to store some of the soccer equipment. And the concern was that it's really sort of out of sight for many of the officers driving by. And by the time they get back there, the crowds would disperse and that there was really no follow-up that could take place. I think there were incidents of kids climbing on this thing and doing other sort of unsavory things that were back there, again, out of sight, and they thought they had free reign. So anyways, the Police Service Board passed a resolution asking council essentially just to consider some steps that may be taken to mitigate that. The suggestions that are listed in the resolution are by no means meant to be exhaustive. They're just simply suggestions that the board, with the advice of a couple of the officers that were at the meeting, came up with on the fly. So I think the resolution that's contained in our agenda tonight is sufficient simply for us to receive the report and to refer it to staff to come up with some possible solutions to deal with this issue. Denise, do you want to touch?
Certainly through the mayor, through the treasurer's report at the last meeting, we did indicate that we had enhanced some of the Parks and Recreation needs. We had referenced the fact that we've identified that adding cameras in a number of our parks would probably be very beneficial. So I believe what you're requesting is something that will be identified and included in the 2021 budget.
Yep. Okay, great. Okay, if that's the case, can I have a mover and seconder to receive the report and refer it to staff to report back on? Councillor Fegan, seconded by Councillor Bonato. All in favor? Carried. Okay, excellent. So that takes us to the grant funding discussion. So I had mentioned at the last meeting, at the absolute very least, I want to set an aggregate amount tonight. But if everybody's ready to go and make the allocations, I think I'd prefer just to get it done. Is there anybody who's not prepared to move ahead tonight? No? Okay. All right. So I'd spoken briefly with Carrie today. So just in terms of broad strokes, so the budget we had last year, or this current year rather, was 22,000. if we consider all of the applications that have been made, and if we were to fund all of those applications at their full requested amount, we're still under that budgeted amount for 2020 without having to increase it. You'll likely remember last year, I think we tacked a little bit of extra money on the top end of that budget, sort of on the notion that if groups come along outside of the normal application process throughout the year, it's nice to have some money set aside to help them out. And I'm still personally a believer in that logic. So I guess the first question is 22,000 still the right number for 2021, or do we want to look at increasing that slightly? Keeping in mind that any increase just simply will increase the amount of breathing room we have on top of the requested allocations. Any thoughts, Councillor Bernardo?
I would like to see it increase by another couple of $1,000 because, for example, some of the recommendations that came forward from the task force tonight, there could be some dollars involved in that and grant funding going forward. So if we're going to do some of those recommendations this year, a bit of wiggle room in our grant funding should be there for that.
Okay. The number I sort of thought about this afternoon was 25,000.
And that would be sort of where I was going at, so that there is some wiggle room for us again, because of those recommendations that came forward tonight.
Yeah. Carrie, any thoughts on that?
Yes, that's fine.
Going to a parent asking for money, eh? Is that doable though? Like that's not gonna.
Yeah, for sure. That's doable.
All right. So is everybody okay with setting 25,000 as the total aggregate amount? Okay. Do you want a separate motion for that, Carrie?
No, I don't think we need one.
Okay. I guess we'll have to approve it with the budget anyway. So as long as you know that that's the amount to include, then when we approve the budget, that'll kind of ratify that. Okay. Well, why don't we just take some time now then, excuse me, to go through each line item individually. So the first one is the Dufferin County Canadian Black Association, and that's the one that the Deputy Mayor has declared an interest on. So he will bow out for a minute.
Just give me a second. I just want to say that whether or not, and I mentioned this in the email, this is just for the benefit of council. And I just want to be clear. I don't sit on the board. I'm not a member of the association, but I felt that because I certainly believe in what the association is doing and the work that they're doing, and it's certainly work that I would promote, I felt that it was best to step aside and allow the rest of council to make a decision on that. So I just want to let people know the reasoning behind it. And so that's the reason why I sent the email to Jennifer over the weekend. So I will sign off at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
How do we get you back on?
Jennifer can get him back in. Okay, so so the ask for this group was $5,000. They didn't receive anything last year. Any thoughts on this request? Councillor Hall?
Again, I think it's something that we should strongly consider. And again, with the work that the group has planned, I think funding wise, though initially set at 5,000, it might be one of those items that in fact it might end up being again undervalued at its current level, but I support it where it's at.
Okay. So I guess the best way of dealing with this, we'll do individual motions for each one. So Councillor Hall, do you want to make a motion that we?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we proceed with the set value that she's put forward in her application.
Okay, so that was $5,000. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Bernardo. Okay. Any further discussion on it? All in favor? Carried. Okay. All right, we'll wait for the deputy mayor to come back. You there, Steve?
Not sure Jennifer can get
Oh,
him
there we go.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so the second one was the little family, excuse me, the little family's haunt in the park. No actual cash value, but an estimated in-kind value of $5,000. This is in line with previous years, this year being accepted, obviously, because the event had to be canceled, at least in its traditional form. And this is mainly for use of the Fiddle Park for an extended period of time for them to do set up, tear down, and the event. Any thoughts on this one, or is there a motion to approve that?
I'll make a motion that we approve it. They do a wonderful job, and even this year with the COVID-19, they're still trying to provide something for the youth and the townspeople. So I'm prepared to move it ahead.
Okay, excellent. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Fegan. Okay, any additional discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Okay, Shelburne from the kin clubs. Again, no cash value, but a $2,000 ask for in-kind services. Again, this is use of Fiddle Park as well as some public works time. I think to help build the snow mountains and create the parking spaces and whatnot. Any thoughts on this one, Councillor Bernardo?
Again, this is another one of those events that hopefully this year COVID will allow it to go forward. It's something that happens that allows the town folk to get together, and I think it's important that we continue to support it.
Yep. Okay. The seconder for that? Councillor Buffett. All right. All in favor? Carried. Okay, Shepherd's Cupboard Food Bank. They received $3,000 last year. They've asked for the same amount this year, despite sort of the uptick in clients that I think they've seen as a result, mainly of COVID this year. I mean, I certainly would be happy to support this one. Is there any other thoughts, concerns about it? Okay, I'll move then that we award the amount requested of $3,000. I get a seconder? Councillor Hall. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, next is what used to be called the school breakfast program. The new formal name is the Children's Foundation of Guelph and Wellington Food and Friends Program. I guess we had given them $2,120 last year. They're asking for $4,000 this year. And I do know there was quite a bit of coordination between this group and the food bank during COVID towards the end of the last school year when schools were shut down. Any thoughts on this one? Councillor Bernardo?
And to my mind, this is an important program. It does do what's required for the children in the school, especially now that they're back in school. So I'm prepared to move with the full amount forward.
Okay. The seconder for that? Councillor Hall. All in favor? Okay. All right, next one is Heritage Music Fest. So we'll give Councillor Buffett a second to sign off. Okay, so they're asking for $5,000 in cash as well as an estimated in-kind donation of $5,000. The $6,200 last year, Carrie, that was cash alone.
It was, and the majority of it was used as deposits for the entertainment. So they will be carrying forward that deposit to next year's event. And the reason that they're still asking for an additional amount for next year is because it is the 70th anniversary, which was supposed to be this year, but now it'll be next year.
Well, and I think that that Michael had mentioned that they also lost some money for advertising and whatnot, you know, certain advertising that had already been sort of set in motion that couldn't be taken back. So,
right.
Okay. Thoughts on this one?
No, I just add to that comment, Mayor Mills. When Michael came in, I certainly, I think we all did appreciated the efforts that they're making to ensure that the event remains inclusive and welcoming to all of our residents. And so I certainly have no issue in supporting them in what they are embarking on at this point in time.
Yeah. And to that point, Deputy Mayor, it was really unfortunate this year because I know there were some exciting plans in motion. I had met with one of the organizers from Heritage, as well as Alethea, trying to think when it was, I think very early in the new year, actually. And we had sort of talked about this beers, barbecue and brew concept and, you know, sort of casting a wider net in terms of appeal. And so anyways, you know, as is the case with many things this year, we've had to take a step back, but I certainly hope that momentum won't be lost as we move into 2021. Okay, can I get a mover and seconder then? That one. Okay. Deputy Mayor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. All right. Councillor Buffett back in. Okay. So next is Get Outreach Works. We had awarded 500 last year. Nicole was asking for 2,000 this year. Gave a pretty compelling presentation on what she was able to accomplish over the course of the last year and some of the plans that she has for the upcoming year. Were there any thoughts on this one? Councillor Wagner, I know you were involved in some of them over the course of 2020.
Yeah, thank you very much. I 100% support this. Nicole is amazing, and between her and her group and the efforts that they're doing is amazing. So I would love to see the whole amount of 2,000, and that way hopefully she can go a little bit bigger and better this year.
Okay, so I'll take that as a motion to approve.
Yep.
Okay. Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Buffett. All right, all in favor? That's carried. All right, Picking in the Park. Greg and Heather weren't able to join us, but I think their request is quite well known to all of us at this point. It's again in line with what they've done in previous years. So it's an in-kind donation that they're looking for, amounting to approximately $3,200 for the use of the park. Any thoughts on this one? Okay, I'll move that we approve that one as requested then. Any, Councillor Bernardo, is that second?
Because I know that the pavilion wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Picking in the Park.
Yep. All right, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Shelburne and District Ag Society. So this is Councillor Wagner's out. Excellent. Okay. So last year they were awarded $750. This year they're asking for 1,000. Okay. Thoughts on this one? No. Okay. I'll go ahead then and move that that the request for 1,000 be approved. You get a seconder, Councillor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. All right. Councillor Wagner back for the last one. All right, so the last one is Shelburne and District Horticultural Society. In an identical request to last year, $600 cash value. Any thoughts on this one? Looks like they're looking at some new and interesting things going forward, so that's encouraging. Councillor Bernardo?
I'll move that we give them the full $600. I think Wayne gave us quite an interesting talk on what he wants to do.
Yeah, and I think we had talked last year about this, and obviously that was another thing that kind of fell victim to COVID. But when we get the community garden up and running next year, I at least envision some role for the Horticultural Society to play in that, in terms of providing some mentorship at least, and maybe helping out. So I think we can probably use them as a resource going forward. So I have absolutely no problem supporting that. Can I get a seconder for Councillor Bernardo's motion? Councillor Hall. All right, all in favor? Carried. Okay, so that takes us to the end. So I guess
what maybe there's actually one other item that I think we have the opportunity to consider, which is the welcome wagon. I know it's under a new name, and I see Carrie, you're probably about to notify Wade about that. So thank you for that. But I know that their application was submitted late, I think, and Carrie, maybe you might be able to help, whether it was $800 or $1,000 that they were requesting.
They requested $1,000 to cover liability insurance.
Right. And I think everybody has a great understanding of the work that they do in the community. I know Bella Carter has taken it over. She has another partner involved, but I think I would certainly move forward to support their efforts in the community, and if it's the $1,000 that they're looking for, I certainly would be happy in providing that.
Okay, you can move that. I'll second that for you. Any discussion on that one? All in favor? Carried. Thanks for reminding me on that one. Okay, so I guess that totals out that at 21,600 cash, in kind donations of 15,200. So it still does leave us some room with respect to the total amount that we'll budget. Okay, excellent. That's good. Okay, so next up we have the Deputy Mayor's notice of motion from the last meeting. Was there a seconder on that one? I can't remember.
I seconded it.
Okay, Councillor Bernardo. All right, so the motion reads as follows. Be it resolved, the council directs staff to complement the Grey County marketing initiatives relating to the transit project, including signage, bus stops, and scheduling times, and that Shelburne supplements Grey County's marketing initiatives to ensure that residents are fully aware of the transit system utilizing social media, Country 105, newspaper ads, and direct mail outs. Deputy Mayor, do you want to speak to that one?
Sure, thanks for the opportunity. And I certainly commend staff. They've already started quickly out of the blocks with respect to having the information shared on social media. As I mentioned before, this is an opportunity to set up this program for success. I akin this effort that I'm proposing similar to that of the anti-racism task force, where we're able to utilize, I believe, free spots on Country 105 that we have. To utilize newspapers and to do a mail drop. And the reason for that, I think, is obvious, right? Which is to ensure that all of our residents are aware of the service that we're offering. And I think Councillor Wagner could speak to this. I know that she agreed the last time, and many of you as well, I'm sure, where you have residents coming up and saying and asking the same question with respect to, tell me more about the service. Where are the stops? What are the ticketing prices? Tell me more about the schedule. And I think this would go a long way in resolving that issue. And one of the last points I'll make is, we have been very fortunate to have this gift bestowed upon us through Grey County without having to put forward any money for it, at least at this point. And I think this is the least that we could do to ensure, again, that the program is set up for success. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bernardo.
I just echo the mayor. I think it's very important that we do advise and notify our residents of what is available to them.
Any other comments? Okay, all in favor? Carried. All right, any notices of motion for this evening? Okay. So communications, are there any items there that anybody would like to pull out? Council meeting schedule for 2021 is in there. That gets posted on the website, I believe, Jennifer.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, if there's nothing of particular interest there, I'd look for a motion to receive the items listed under communications for information. Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Bonato. All in favor? Carried. And can I get a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw? Councillor Buffett, seconded by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Wegner. All in favor? That's carried. All right. Thank you, guys.